how do we dial in for each individual person? And it sounds so great, but when it comes down to it, there is a foundational core problems going on with the body, mitochondrial dysfunction that's triggered from toxicity that then is creating suppressed immune system, increasing parasite, other microbial imbalances, co-infections, clogging drainage pathways. And it's within all of those things that it's like every time we work with a patient, we have to address the core first.
Symptoms are only part of the story. I'm Dr. Drew Kidder.
I'm Dr. Emily Hernandez. And on the Healing Terrain, we explore deeper systems influencing clinical outcomes, from toxic burden and microbial imbalance
to the foundational factors that drive resilience and long-term health. Hey everyone, Dr. Drew Kidder, and I am super excited to have everyone joining us for this episode of the Healing Terrain podcast. I'm joined, first of all, by my colleague, Dr. Emily Hernandez, and we have a super special guest group today, the very co-founders of CellCore Biosciences, Dr. Todd Watts and Dr. Davidson, the very brains behind everything that CellCore has evolved into today. We have the pleasure of talking about a concept that really was developed by the two of these brilliant minds, and that is foundational medicine. You know, we live in this world of integrative, functional, root cause medicine, but foundational medicine has truly been a game changer in this industry for the past nearly 10 years. And so I would love to hear you guys talk about both through personal story and then just the evolution of CellCore, where you came up with this concept of foundational medicine because of what was missing.
So I like to use the example of a house on fire. If we're sick, there's something going on inside. The house is on fire. Western medicine says, hey, let's put a screen in front of that, cover it up so you don't know what's happening, but it's still on fire, right? That's the symptomatology is masked, but the fire is still going. Functional medicine and integrative, a lot of root cause, they say they got all these nutrients that go into the body to help, but that's like, adding more paint or putting more drywall up or adding more 2x4s, the fire's still going. Foundational medicine is like, hey, let's put out the fire. Let's remove what's really causing the problem and then address the nutrient issue and the reparative process in the body. So that's where I think the part of like, oh, I root cause medicine and I give you all these nutrients. They're missing the part is like, you need to get rid of what's creating that problem. Is it mold, parasites, Lyme? Is it, mental, emotional instability or trauma that has happened? Sure. And is it toxins, toxicants that are causing the damage in the mitochondria and in the body? What's there that creating the problem?
So I'm hearing remove what shouldn't be there.
Yes.
Instead of adding more of what we think needs to be there, just trying to plug holes, which sadly is all too often the medical model, right? It's a pill for every ill. And yet many people still practice functional integrative root cause medicine with that same methodology, right? Throwing supplements at it. So Dr. J, give us a little bit more, because the two of you really went back to that root, which is the core of CellCore, which is what?
Yeah, well, it took me about 5 years for Todd to tell me the reason he wanted to name it CellCore was the core of the cell is the mitochondria. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense why you wanted to name it CellCore. Better than mitochondrial core biosciences or whatever, right? But,
yeah.
It all comes back from the clinical side of things. As we worked with hundreds of patients, challenging each other, testing things, figuring out what works and doesn't work. And the goal is always get results, but as fast as possible with the least amount of side effects as possible. And it kept coming back to, it was like the same core things that we had to keep addressing. And in these conferences, especially functional medicine and all the different, nutritional CEUs and all these things, it was always about customization and, how do we dial in for each individual person? And it sounds so great, but when it comes down to it, there is a foundational core problems going on with the body, mitochondrial dysfunction that's triggered from toxicity that then is creating suppressed immune system, increasing parasite, other microbial imbalances, co-infections, clogging drainage pathways. And it's within all of those things that it's like every time we work with a patient, we have to address the core first, because that core is creating so much static, right? It's so much noise in the body, whether it's a diagnosis, symptomatology. But what we found, Todd and I, was like, if we just remove some of the major dominoes right away, which seem to be almost similar in every single person, now all of a sudden that noise, and then we can customize to that person and fine tune what they need. And that's where we came up with this idea of like, well, this is really, it's not necessarily functional medicine. It's more foundational medicine. And then functional medicine comes after foundational medicine to really hone in and customize beyond that initial.
That's awesome. I mean, I love that idea that there's that foundation, right? You can't build a house without a strong foundation. And I think people think, oh, it's, a setup system, so it's not individualized. But I love what you said. Like, most people are dealing with these big, similar themed issues, and you kind of have to address that first before you can individualize. So the individualization is coming, but you still have to kind of get rid of the main issues. And what I love what you guys did was there's a system, right? An order of things. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with what had to happen first?
Yeah. So at the beginning, we had just a couple products, the anti-parasitics, and they were helping a lot of people. But then there was people, a subset that were reacting and not feeling well, addressing the gut issues there. So, Jay's like the drainage master. He's like, we need more drainage. This is what's going on. And so once we addressed the drainage and we created the roadmap to health, right. This is Jay's genius of putting that out there and mapping it how it needs to happen. That really helped. So we addressed energy and drainage at the beginning. So then enzymatic reactions start to occur. The organ systems start to work better. Everything starts to move forward before you go after the things that could be plugging things up or causing issues and health problems. Jay, want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was trial and error.
Yeah.
When my wife had our daughter in 2012 and the bottom fell out and she nearly died, it was really traumatic. Basically reaching out to all these different practitioners, learning as much as we could, trying to figure out how to put the pieces together. She just reacted to everything. And so that's where I'm like, I gotta open the drainage pathways, gotta move things. And it was just that obsession, like OCD, figuring that out. Because when you realize if you can help some of the most severely sick and sensitive patients, somebody that's not even close to that is going to get well way easier. So if you can figure out the most challenging cases and build your roadmap to health as we did, or protocol order off of that, and it works for the most sensitive ones, it's going to work for those that aren't as bad, and also those that are just looking to optimize.
Right.
Well, you touched on an important thing that I wanted to talk about with both of you, because people oftentimes in this industry talk about turning pain into purpose, right? Practitioners who do that. The two of you truly built this company on that same pain to purpose. You talk about your wife's, health struggles. You dealt with your own, challenges with your health, even though you were a healthcare provider. So can you talk about that, a little bit of why you were so passionate about addressing those oftentimes hidden infections and how they can be such a stumbling block for overall healing?
So at the beginning of my journey going through chiropractic school, I figured out a lot of my health issues, and it was diagnosed with Lyme and Babesia, right? Some of the co-infections. And so then I was going through and doing those protocols and working through like, oh, hey, I'm feeling better. Then I would crash, and I feel better, and then I would crash. It's like, okay, something I'm missing here. I'm still really fatigued. What's going on? So then I had a doctor say, hey, maybe you should look at parasites. Went down that rabbit hole. A huge impact. My immune system balanced out. I stopped crashing, leveled out, able to get off, take care of all those Lyme symptoms. And then there was still something there. Like, man, I still can't work out. Like, what's going on in my muscles? And that's where I learned about toxins. And then that drove me towards like, hey, there's something I'm missing. These binders changed my life literally in 60 days. I went from 10 years about not being able to work out to in 60 days being able to work out, dosing up these binders and realizing, wow, what a difference it makes going from environmental chemicals and toxins to the radioactive elements were the two key elements that I addressed and changed my life.
So foundational medicine, right? You also reference these binders, right? Can you two talk about truly the foundation of almost every single one of the CellCore products and what they're built on? Dr. J, can you talk about, our bioactive carbon technology and what you guys brought to this market that truly no one else is doing?
Yeah, I would say just a God thing of learning about these natural compounds that can be used that can absolutely change people's lives, and connecting with them, and obviously us figuring those formulas out and how everything worked. But when you look at just putting protocols together, one of the restrictions practitioners always know is compliance. It's like, I can tell you what to do, but are you going to do it? And are you going to be able to handle what I do? And one of the challenges with just the traditional binders, the activated charcoal, the, coconut carbon charcoal, whatever in that realm, clays, is take it on an empty stomach, So that means if you ate anything, wait 2 hours, then take it, then wait at least another hour. Now that's 3 hours in somebody's day that you have to get a product in. And what we realized with the humic and fulvic acid blends that we were able to get access to is that not only could you take that with food, and ideally it's almost better, especially if you're eating out at a restaurant and you have no idea where that food came from, what it's being cooked in. If there's chemicals in that food and you take a binder with it, it'll help support and bind onto the chemicals from that food, but at the same time, not steal any nutrients, where the old binders would steal nutrients. And so as we were seeing clients, we realized not only is this just better binding technology, but it was almost more important that it was easier compliance, and that it made it easier because you could take it whenever you wake up, in the middle of a meal, between a meal, before bed. It's like that was there. And then as we dove farther and farther into fulvic and humic acid, we realized that these bioactive carbon molecules can actually be used as shuttles to help deliver the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals into the tissues. And I think it's those pieces that, I think it's a God thing on how we all got here, but it's like the fact that all that can come together from one product is pretty phenomenal.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how the fulvics and the humics bind the toxins but leave the nutrients? I've always been really interested in how that all works.
So when you're looking at what fulvic humics do, they have these functional groups. They're able to either donate an electron, a proton, an oxygen molecule, or accept one. So they're an acceptor or a donator. The goal here with the toxins is they donate and they remove the toxicity. They neutralize the toxin or toxicant, which then allows the body to remove from the system.
Changing
the pH,
charge.
but it's also just changing the charge. So then it no longer can do the damage, which is what's happening. So they also can envelop, right? Bind onto that, envelop with that molecule, that fulvic or humic molecule, envelop that toxin. So then the body naturally knows what to do with it. So it's amazing how it can work, in the studies and research that's behind these the chemicals reaction with the fulvic and humics is incredible, depending on what type of fulvic and humic it is, because they're not all alike, right? I can't just go get this is fulvic humic. Now they have different mineral balances from one mine to the next mine. They have different pHs. They have different effectiveness based off of few different items or chemical constituencies that are needed to be most effective. That's where we've had such great success with ours versus other places that people get them from.
Quality, right? Quality and
Quality.
how it, where you find it all makes, same thing with herbs, right?
Same with herbs.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Amazing.
here we are talking about humics and fulvics and this bioactive carbon technology, yet some of our viewers may be sitting there going, but what are humics and fulvics? Right? Can you guys just kind of peel it back a little bit and explain to people like what exactly they are, where they come from?
Yeah, it's basically just like thousands of years ago, decayed plant matter broke down and just got very concentrated into this. So it's just a natural thing versus if you look at like a activated charcoal, it's already spent. It's a spent carbon. So it's like if I put a piece of wood in a fire and it burns, now I have ash, and now that is a spent carbon molecule, and then I'm going to consume that. Where humic and fulvic, right? Fulvic is within humic. Humic is bigger structure. It's a darker structure. This decayed plant matter over like thousands of years basically concentrates where it's still unspent. So it's not a burnt molecule. Concentrated, it's deep enough where it's not exposed to the modern day toxicity elements either. So it's a natural product that is amphiphilic. So it means it can go within a membrane. It can, interact hydrophilic and hydrophobic. It can give and take in reactions, like Todd was just saying. And the other thing that's really interesting is some chemicals are very high energy, like radioactive elements, uranium, thorium, radium, these different things. They have a lot of energy, and there's very few things that can actually help to remove them, because the thing that helps to remove them is something that has to be high energy itself. So if I look at a traditional binder, traditional carbon that's already spent, the energy is already expended, it doesn't have energy to quench that radioactive decay energy. And so humic and fulvic, it's natural, it's plant-based, it's years and years and years old, very deep, away from modern day toxins. We get it, test it, and then we can also extract the fulvic from the humic and, do different things with it with the blends that we have, basically.
So ultimately, it's because of that ability to donate and accept electrons, donate and accept protons, it really is probably looked at as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants.
Yeah, it's probably the best verbiage is it's the ultimate adaptogen. Ashwagandha, rhodiola, and the natural realm was always talked about as, oh, those are, great adaptogens. It's like, well, really the fulvic and humic molecules are, like you said, they are the ultimate adaptogen.
I want to make sure we unpack a little bit more because we talked about the roadmap to health, right? So the importance of the humics and fulvics to support mitochondria. I know you guys are big believers that most people push detoxification too quickly, right? Which is where you came up with drainage, right? You talked about drainage a little bit, but can you talk a little bit more about, the drainage funnel and how you guys came up with that important concept of, hey, you've got to support all of these natural drainage pathways to even mobilize toxins and move them out of the body?
Well, that part goes to the clinical experience we were having. I remember one of my first patients I had in practice, I gave her some products to help with candida, and she broke out boils all over her body. And so a month later, she comes back to the office and told me what happened. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? How often do you go to the bathroom? Oh, every 7 to 10 days. Oh man, I would never give somebody an antimicrobial if I knew they weren't going to the bathroom. So I didn't ask the question. So that became really important for me. And Jay, he talks about, are you pooping? Like that was always a big thing. And then I learned so much about the drainage pathways for Jay because of his wife's journey.
Yeah, and it was just through trial and error. I mean, Todd and I would talk for hours and hours, and like, we're so close and almost like brothers that we would challenge each other. Well, what about this? And what about this? And it's from that roadmap to health was formed. It was from that we refined the drainage funnel, and we would ask practitioners, like, challenge us. What are we missing? What are we, and we'd look at literature and how it supports and the whole, emergency hatch that we created on the drainage funnel, all that. It was just, I mean, it is amazing to look back and think about how that we even came up with that. I don't know. I think it's a God thing or something, but it's a priority, right? There's always an order. And even in the drainage, if you're not pooping, that's the base of the funnel. And drainage is just simply the pathways that move and flow things in the body. If I say detoxification, then, in my own terminology, I'm grabbing onto a chemical, a toxin, a toxicant, a poison, and I'm pulling it out of the body. So drainage is moving things and detox is grabbing chemicals. So if you're not pooping, everything above the funnel gets backed up. Then you have the liver and bile ducts, because the liver has phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. That's basically, the thing that if you have poisons in your body, your liver is going to transform it into somewhat a little bit more toxic in phase 1, but then that gets it ready for phase 2 to then neutralize it. And then there's this thing called phase 3 that once it's processed in the liver, it's got to get rid of it. Well, it's going to put it in the bile that then goes into the colon, goes into the stool. And so it's just going in order. So you have the base where the colon is the most important thing to make sure your bowel movements. I say at least, twice a day. I think just regular healthy people, great, 1 to 2. If you're having any type of health challenges, I like to push that up like 2 to 3. Like let's not be holding on to any chemicals or toxins. And then, supporting the liver bile duct system that then impacts the lymphatic system above that. Then that breaks down into organs and tissues. And then at the very top, you have at the cellular level. So if you hear like, oh, let's, heal at the cellular level, well, that can only happen if you're draining at the cellular level. And in order to drain at the cellular level, that means the organ and tissues have to drain. That means the lymph has to drain. That means the liver and bile ducts have to drain. And then that means you have to be pooping. So if anything in that funnel is backed up, now all of a sudden you get clogged up. And one of the most impactful and critical areas that we've seen is that liver bile duct system, especially in the chronic illness. I mean, with clients and, the challenges they deal with, that gets backed up. And in literature, what's shown is it's basically leaky gut, but of the bile ducts. So where liver does phase 1 and phase 2 detox and then puts it into the bile ducts to get rid of it through the GI, if it's backed up, those cells open up, they get leaky. So it's basically the blood bile barrier, not the brain, but the blood bile down here opens up. And those toxins, instead of pooping them out, they go right in your bloodstream. And literature has shown that directly impacts itching, rashes, damages the kidneys, endothelial cells of the kidneys, endothelial cells of the lungs. And so that's really why the drainage funnel is so important to comprehend, because if you start having symptoms, you need more drainage. and it all happened just because my wife was so sensitive and reactive that it was like just trying to figure out what do we need to do. And then once you realize that drainage is a key to minimize symptomatology, you have a lot happier people around you.
I truly hope that this is the first of many with the two of you, because you have so much wisdom, so much brilliance, what you have truly your heart. And as you said, a lot of it a God thing that just has put all of this into the right place, but what you have built with CellCore. So I can't thank you enough for your time here on this Healing Terrain podcast, but I can't thank you enough for what you've done to the CellCore community, what you've done to this industry as a whole of truly being, game changers, being chain breakers, of opening up people's minds, changing their paradigm. So thank you guys for pouring into so many people, other practitioners, and their patients' lives. So we're incredibly grateful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Healing Terrain. If this episode challenged the way you think about health and healing,
Please follow, share, and leave a review. It helps more practitioners and curious listeners discover the conversations shaping
the future of foundational medicine.